Was the one-man, one-shilling formula of county revenue allocation. Speaking at ABC Church in Machakos Town, Makueni Senator Mutula Kilonzo Jr., Machakos Senator Boniface Kabaka and Kitui Senator Enoch Wambua say there is a ploy to benefit some counties more than others. They further say reducing funds for certain counties will beat the spirit of equity in revenue allocation. Let's take a look.
Makueni imekufa. Sasa itakuwaje? Watu wote itamaanisha watakuja Machakos. Sasa devolution haitakuwa ina maana. Na ni mzuri kwanza muelewe na ile philosophy inafanyika na Mount Kenya. Hii inaitwa square root, hii ni unafiki. Hii square root, hii ni kuibia wa Kenya.
Sheria ambayo inafanya wale ambao wanaongoza formula hii kuweza kushawishi mtu yoyote. Ni kwa nini kaunti ya Makueni imetolewa pesa ikapatiwa Machakos, kaunti ya Kitui imetolewa pesa ikapatiwa Machakos.
Commended the third generation basis for sharing revenue. They put in there that the counties that were supposed to be losing money, the treasury was expected to create a cushion fund, 15%, so that the people who are losing money, that money will be compensated to the extent of the loss. Treasury said they don't have money. Sasa sijui kama Ukur Yatani amepata hii pesa ama hajapata.
Still on the sharing of revenue, Kenyans on social media have condemned the take of Nairobi Senator Johnson Sakaja regarding the new revenue sharing formula that was proposed by Senate Majority Whip Irungu Kangata. Sakaja has responded on his Twitter handle after banners terming the senator as a traitor were erected on the streets of Nairobi. Now, the senator said today's paid hashtag is "Let's get tweeting and help the keyboard warriors earn their daily bread." The Senate is set to meet tomorrow to debate and pass an amendment on the third basis of this basis formula on revenue allocation. And still on the emotive county revenue sharing formula, youth drawn from Western Kenya have drummed support for the third generation formula. They addressed the press earlier today in Nairobi. Let's listen in.
As a Mulembe nation, and generally as a people of Kenya, we have been socialized, and sadly so, to reject and to embrace proposals from narrow lenses, depending on who the proponents and the opponents are. We as a nation rarely criticize, analyze concepts, especially in political and governance spheres, devoid of emotions or tribal undertones. Gradually, we have been taught to reject concepts, including but not limited to the recent third generation division of revenue formula, by demagogues and charlatans who give it a tag of exclusion and amplify it through dubious propaganda to achieve their narrow political end. That as a generation, we were alive and dutifully so campaigned for the 2010 Constitution of Kenya. We fully identify with Chapter 15 of our Constitution that establishes commissions and independent offices, among them the Commission on Revenue Allocation. The Commission is tasked, among other constitutional underpinnings, to present recommendations on the third basis of equitable sharing of revenue among county governments as stipulated in Article 216(1). Secondly, that the recommendations seek to address four primary objectives: to enhance service delivery, to promote balanced development, to incentivize county to optimize capacity, to raise revenue, and to prudent use of public resources. It is worth noting that in actualizing these objectives, the Commission for Revenue Allocation makes use of data made available by relevant government institutions. In the last 18 months, we have had a significant change of data. The Kenya National Bureau of Statistics released new census data and the Kenya Integrated Household Budget Survey data. Would like to note that these two respective data change the population numbers and poverty indices that is basically used by the Commission for Revenue Allocation. Hypothetically, Putting such data into perspective, even if the Commission for Revenue Allocation uses the previous allocation formula, what counties receive today will drastically differ from what they received in previous years.
Our leaders, especially our senators, that they should stop playing the equity politics, but play the equality politics. Because in Western Kenya, we need resources to build ourselves. We need resources to have industries, infrastructure, and employment to our youth. More youths are looking for jobs in other counties. Why can't our leaders bring the resources to the counties, our counties, the Western counties, so that we can have our youth working within their counties instead of looking for jobs in different counties? And this is because allocation hasn't been used in a balanced way, and politics has been playing out all the time. So I want to ask our leaders, especially as a woman, I want to see women in my community being empowered, and they can only be empowered if we get this allocation. Like in the third formula allocation of revenue, Bungoma County is going to get 1 billion, Kakamega County is going to get 1 billion, and which other county? Trans Nzoia is going to get 560 million. So in total.
Away from that, an elderly care center has been set up for the first time in Mikai village in Kabondo Kasipul constituency in order to take care and protect the old generation from contracting COVID-19. The move has also brought up differences among the community, saying that the setting up of the center violates their tradition. Let's take a look.
We have now, as I'm talking right away, we have so many applicants that want to come and stay together with us. But because of the COVID era and the pandemic that is countrywide, we are not able to accommodate them as at now.
Now, taking somebody from their homes to a new home like this gives them headache, because they feel that when they leave their home and stay away for long, when they go back to their homes, they will not stay, and automatically they will die. That's a tradition, but laws, or we do believe it.
Shida yangu mimi sioni, samani ulikuwa mimi naona. Sasa ni mwaka mbili haoni. Sasa kuletwa hapa mimi naona vizuri zaidi. Baada hiyo mimi naoga na maji ya kuchemusha. Chakula mimi nakula kwa saa.
Let's take this interesting piece by Andreen. Now, they live among us, and each day does not appear different for them from the face value. But deep inside, persons living with hearing impairment have moving and told stories. Unlike Andriki Lemi reports, some cannot sign properly because they did not study the Kenya Sign Language in school. Take a look.
6 a.m. Monday, and we set out to Nairobi's Utawala Estate, which is approximately 24 kilometers from the country's capital, Nairobi. We are headed to Stephen Miner's residence, a 30-year-old man who since birth has never heard or uttered a word. He is deaf and dumb. We arrive at his home where he lives with his sister Monica. It is 7 a.m. He is ready to go to work, but first, a cup of tea. After having his breakfast, Miner grabs his backpack ready to start his journey to the city. And when he gets to town, he walks straight to his place of work. He opens up his business. This is where he gets his daily bread. He says he loves his job, even though the daily earnings are too little.
Mapato ya hii kazi yangu ni kidogo sana.
Maina went to school up to standard 3, and therefore communication between me and him is a bit complex. He did not learn the Kenyan Sign Language. His signs are local. His sister Monica narrates how Maina had once disappeared for a period of 10 years.
Tukamtafuta kwa manti na relatives hatukumpata. Ndio sasa tukaanza after 1 week akaanza kutangazwa, lakini hakupatikana. Sasa tumekaa nilikuwa primary by then, nikasoma high school nikamaliza, nikaenda college.
His family continued to look for him Little did they know that their son was in Mombasa. How and when he got there is still a puzzle to date.
Mtafuta here and there, tulimtafuta kwa magazeti, kwa ma-TV, lakini hatukumpata. But at long last, niliona headline kwa newspaper Daily Nation ati alikuwa amepatikana Mombasa, lost and found, na nikatafuta my all means, nikamwendea Mombasa.
And as soon as Monica got to the city of Mombasa, she was shocked after finding out that another woman was claiming Maina, saying that he had given birth to twins years back and that Maina was one of the twins who had disappeared.
Tulifika tukaonyeshana evidence, mimi nikapeana picha rasmi yenye alipigwa, yenye tumepigwa as a family, my dad, my mom, wote wenye tumezaliwa pamoja vile tumepigwa, tulienda nazo zote.
After in-depth investigations, Monica got to reunite with his brother Maina after a decade. They set out to Nairobi, where Maina now works as a street vendor. He sells beaded stuff alongside other basic commodities. His neighbors at work say he's quite a hard-working man.
Kama furugu sasa, kama makelele nini ama vita imeanza ama matia gazi yamerushwa, na mwambia na kujanga na mguza. Namguza na mwambia, na muonyesha sana mpoimbia na mkono, na mwambie bwana angalia pale. Akiona hivi ama akiona mahali watu wamekusanyika, anapenda sana, anakimbia hapo mbio. Anaenda anaanza kuangalia juu anaona fani, anaona vitu fani. Anasimama hapo anaangalia, alafu anarudi hapa anaanza kutuambia. Anaanza kunielezea venye ameona nini. Na anapenda sana akiona kwanza watu wakiibiwa ama wakishikwa kwa mfuko. Anapenda kukimbiza huyo mtu sana, anamsaidia, anamwambia funga hiyo mfuko. Huyo anataka kukuibia, anapenda hivyo sana.
Communication between Stephen and his clients is rather complex. It is this challenge, however, that enables him to meet his daily needs.
This is Mr. and Mrs. Yego's home. Yego and his wife have been married for a long time now. Their lives are dependent on sign language. The two cannot hear or speak. They were both born deaf and dumb. Before Yego met his wife Paris, he had married another woman whose hearing ability was just fine. After their first child was born, their marriage began to fall apart. Yego narrates of how one thing led to another until the two could not stay together any longer.
Nilikuwa na bibi mwingine ambaye alikuwa na uwezo wa kusikia. Tuliishi naye tukabarikiwa na mtoto wa kiume. Baadaye akatoroka na akabeba kila kitu pamoja na mtoto.
His wife Paris on the other end tells us of their challenges as a couple. She says since their marriage she has not been able to bear a child.
Mara nyingi huwa najawa na mawazo kwa sababu sijafanikiwa kupata mtoto. Na pia nimeenda hospitalini na kufanyiwa uchunguzi na madaktari. Wakasema kuwa sina tatizo lolote. Nimepewa madawa lakini bado nawaza kwa nini sijapata mtoto.
Apart from that, the couple tells me that it is really difficult to live under the same roof with their inability to hear. Paris narrates how one morning she woke up and all their clothes had been stolen from the hanging lines outside.
Nilifua nguo, nikazianika hapa nje. Usiku wezi wakakuja wakazichukua zote kabisa, hadi zile za kanisa ambazo huwa tunaimba nazo.
With the current coronavirus pandemic, life hasn't been easy for Yego and his wife.
Nilikuwa na deni la nyumba, likawa linaongezeka mara kwa mara. Ya kwanza ilikuwa 5,000, ikawa 6,000, baadaye 8,000, kisha 10,000. Mara kwa mara mwenye nyumba alikuwa akilalamikia kodi kwa sababu hatukuwa tumelipa kwa miezi 3. Bwana yangu akazungumza naye na kumweleza kuwa hawajalipwa kwa muda huo wote. Akamweleza mwenye nyumba awe mtulivu kidogo ili azungumze na mkubwa wake kazini, lakini mkubwa naye akasema tutulie tu.
Their landlord says for 3 months now the couple hasn't been paying rent.
Na tangu 2017 nimekuwa na wao, tukisukumana na wao tu, saa ingine wanalipa nyumba, saa ingine inawasukuma, mimi nawapea nafasi tu watabute pesa. Na sababu najua ni watu hawajiwezi sana, nimekuwa nikiwavumilia na tumekaa tukifurahiana na wao. Na wakati hii COVID-19 imekuja, Ndio sasa challenges ikawa ni wazi, maana kule huyu bwana alikuwa anafanya vibarua na huyu bibi yake akienda Nairobi kufanya vibarua, maisha ikawa ngumu sasa wakati wa lockdown.
Those are some of the challenges that the deaf community live with, and it is through these challenges that their lives become interesting, while overcoming them makes life meaningful. Andrin Kilemi for TV47.
And from that story, it's time that we take a short break. We'll be right back with much more, so don't you go anywhere. And thank you for choosing to stay with Newsfeed. And now let's proceed. In the majestic plains of Kenya's Masai Mara, the coronavirus pandemic spells economic disaster for locals who earn a living from tourists who flock here to see the abundant wildlife. Now, even before the virus arrived in mid-March, tourism revenues had plummeted with the cancellations from crucial markets like China, Europe, and the US.
The song and dance of the Maasai people have long drawn tourists to Kenya. But these face masks are not part of their traditional clothing. They are a sign of the coronavirus, which has driven away their main source of income.
We completely depend on tourists to make a living in our community. We are currently faced with a huge challenge because they're not visiting anymore. They pay $30 to come to our village, and that helps us sustain our families. As we speak, some of our people are not able to provide for their families. Some are sick and can't afford medical care.
The Masai Mara is one of Africa's best-known savanna regions, popular for its mixture of private conservancies and national reserve land. The traditional herders who live here get much of their revenue from renting their land out to tourism lodges. Some also opt to work in these establishments as cooks or guides. But right now, lodge managers cannot afford to pay the Maasai their usual rent.
This model depends on tourism. Tourists come into the camp and the money they pay to be in the camps for this to survive. So without this, so far what they're doing right now is that they're paying half.
The streets of Talek, a small village at the entrance to the reserve, are normally bustling with 4x4s. they are now empty. Nalakiti Sayalel has not sold any of her beaded necklaces and bracelets since the start of the year.
We cannot even sell our animals for money because all markets have been closed. Before the pandemic, at a time like this, I would make a lot of ornaments and make a lot of money.
Kenya declared its first COVID-19 case in March. Since then, international flights have stopped and national parks have closed. The capital, Nairobi, went into a strict lockdown. But trouble started even earlier for hotel and lodge owners. Over 80% of reservations were cancelled at the start of the year, many of them from Chinese or American clients.
If the landowners are not getting any revenue, they can't feed themselves, they can't send their kids to school, they would have no option but to look at other forms of land utilization. So whether that is fencing it off, whether it's selling it to people, and all those other alternate land uses don't go together with wildlife and elephants and big cats.
Kenya's tourism industry has already lost $750 million this year, according to official figures, roughly half of last year's total revenue. International flights here will restart in August, but the high season is already past, and many hotels will remain shut. As for the Maasai, they hope that domestic tourists will come to their rescue and get them through the year.
Now, America's first crewed spaceship to fly to the International Space Station in nearly a decade returned